Nope. Welcome to Scholastic's Comic Book Maker. I'm Jim Davis, creator of Garfield the cat. You know, for over 20 years now, I've let Garfield eat, sleep, and torment John and Odie. Now it's your turn. To learn more about Garfield, click on any highlighted word on this screen. Have fun with the fat cat. It's hard to be funny every day, so when I write gags, I work on funny days. And for me, gag writing is like a working meditation. I watch Garfield in my head like watching a television set. I don't really write the material myself. Garfield literally writes the material. Now that sounds a little bit strange, but this is how it works. I sit back in a very quiet place and I visualize Garfield until I can literally see him in my head. I can watch him walk, I can hear him talk, I see him move, everything, okay? Then at that point, I put Garfield into a situation. I send him camping, I put him on a diet, I bring the mail to the door, I do something like that. And then I just sit back and watch Garfield. And I ask myself, what would he do, what would he say, where would he go, what would the other characters do and say? And then when he does something funny, I back up 3 frames and cut it off. And that's exactly how I write the gags. For the kind of humor I do with Garfield too, I look at the kind of laugh that it evokes, okay? After you've laughed at a Garfield gag, you feel better. I don't do any kind of shock humor or anything too edgy in that respect. I like to do the kinds of gags that people can relate to. More often than not, when they laugh at a gag, it's because they're saying, isn't that true? All I do is just hold a mirror right back to the reader and show it back with a humorous twist. Garfield deals with eating and sleeping, and everybody can relate to those 2 subjects. So long after they've forgotten the gag, they remember the character. Garfield is special because he's a human in a cat suit. We live in a time where we're made to feel guilty about overeating, oversleeping, and not exercising. And Garfield not only does those things, he defends his right to do those things. You see, thereby relieving our guilt. We see ourselves in Garfield, and we feel better about ourselves as a result because Garfield doesn't apologize for what he likes. Inside, we're all a little bit Garfield. He works on several levels. People love cats. Cats live all over the world. So he's easy to translate in an animal form. By virtue of being a cat, he's not young or old or male or female either. So I have great leeway to do a broad range of gags without fear of reprisal. Because for some reason, human failings are very endearing in an animal. I think the young readers like Garfield because he kicks Odie off the table. He loves to do a lot of physical gags. I personally was a fan of the Three Stooges as a child. In fact, I still am. And I like to see good physical humor. Also, young people like him because he has attitude. He resents authority, that parental authority represented by his owner, John. He does things pretty much his own way, so a lot of people identify with that. And I think the adults identify with his struggle with diets, with his struggle with motivation. I have a lot of subjects I love to write for Garfield because there are several that I can personally identify with. For instance, when I go on a diet, I take Garfield with me. It's easy to write for diets on one of my own diet weeks because I think people think of food entirely differently. Food always tastes better, and gags like diet is die with a T. Diet is making a molehill out of a mountain, and things like that have really identified Garfield with dieting over the years. Also, I guess the motivation kind of gags. I'd like mornings better if they started later. The camping gags are always fun because it's just great fun to irritate Garfield. There's some subjects I know he is not going to like, and he seems to come up with his funniest material, especially when he's outside so far from the refrigerator. He said he'd like the outside better if it had a roof over it. Among some of my favorite situations certainly has to be the farm gags, because for me that's autobiographical. John's family is my family. Mom, Dad, and his brother Doc Boy. I do have a brother, Doc Boy, and Mom and Dad are caricatures of my own mother and father from living on the farm. So I can also write about farming with a certain amount of experience because that's how I grew up. So I think you have to write about a little bit what you know in order to make it believable. Garfield and I are very dissimilar in many ways. I look forward to Monday mornings, and I'm an optimist, whereas Garfield is a pessimist. But aside from that, there are a lot of fun things to write about, and I'm looking forward to creating some new situations and some new characters for Garfield over the years. We'll see how he reacts to those. While you're playing with your comic book maker, here are a couple of 3 handy things to keep in mind while you're playing with Garfield. You know, a lot of the humor comes from conflict. That is, those things that create friction. If everybody looked the same, if everybody got along, there would be absolutely no laughs anywhere in comics. There are classic differences between characters. For instance, short, tall. Fat, thin, smart, stupid, like with Garfield and Odie, and certainly cat, dog. That makes for great friction. So when you're looking for situations or things to do or say with a comic strip, think about those things in your life that might be less than pleasant, whether it's doing homework or working late at the office or being in a traffic jam or particularly cold coffee, whatever it is, use that as an inspiration to start your writing. Ask yourself, what would you do, what would you say from that point on? Also, take the characters and have them play with each other, juxtapose them in such ways that maybe an idea is sparked there, because you don't know where an idea is going to come from. It could be from logically thinking something through. It might be with a particularly funny punchline that you heard in a restaurant or at school at the office or something there. You could back a gag off from it. Or you can simply look at the art, and sometimes the 2 characters playing off each other or the whole situation seems to write its own gag. I remember one writer said that writing gags is like going into a big dark closet. You go in, you get some gags off the shelf, and you leave, but you never knew how big that closet was. Well, let me tell you, the closet is just as big as you want it to be. So, like I say, play with the characters, but the main thing is to have fun. You can't fool your readers. If you're having fun, they have fun reading it. Something translates through. How to get started in the comic strip business? Well, hone your skills with the comic book maker. Now, in addition to that, it also helps to get a good, well-rounded education, believe it or not. Some good liberal arts training. I think education beyond high school. Do a lot of reading. The more you read, the more natural depth your writing is going to have. And when it comes to learning artwork, you don't have to be an art major, but it certainly helps to have art training. And by art training, I mean learn to draw realistically. Believe it or not, you can't just start drawing cartoon characters. Learn things like anatomy. Do a lot of still life drawing. Those kinds of elements that you pick up around a room like a banana or a telephone, once you draw them in your head, they are now added to your repertoire, and it's easier to cartoon them later on when you're a cartoonist. So try to get a job, by the way, related to journalism or related to art, so you can work at least around the edges of cartooning to afford you luxuries like food and electricity while you're trying to get started as a cartoonist. There's very little space for new comic strips, but there are other ways to cartoon. You can become an animator. There's a big business for that. Magazine, anything around it, or working with humor. Well, if your day doesn't come soon, I tried for over 9 years to get started with Garfield. It's kind of like going to school and never knowing when you're going to graduate. If you keep fun with it and you keep honing your skills, why someday maybe you can do this too, because it's great work if you can get it. Cartooning is a very unique art form. It's not exactly writing, even though we use words. It's not exactly illustration, even though we use drawings. It's a good combination of the two. And also, even though we're doing jokes, we're not telling jokes. Timing is very different in the head. So how do you put all these elements together to create a really viable or funny comic strip? Well, what I like to do is to work in 3 frames. After all, we only have 7 inches in that newspaper to fill. In that 7 inches, we have to set up a gag, offer the twist, and then resolve it. Usually in 25 words or less, because as comics readers, you don't like to take a lot of time with a comic strip. So for me, 2, 3s, I think, are very funny. It's like bump, bump, da-da. The middle frame is real critical to the timing. Sometimes, for the sake of a beat or something like that, or give Garfield time to think, and I'll put no words at all in the middle frame, and then we pay it in the last frame, usually with some Garfield put down or some kind of physical reaction. The trick is to get to the punchline before the reader does, because laughter is evoked from an involuntary laugh. When I can get to the gag before you do, that catches you by surprise, and that makes for a good laugh. What I like to do is to do Garfield very large, and the words as large as I can as well, because comic strips in the newspapers seem to be getting smaller these days. And the bigger the pictures, the easier it is to make it through the gag. I don't get real cute with the characters either, in that I don't do close-ups, then long shots, I don't do silhouettes or anything like that. I usually like to work with Garfield just on a plain tabletop so that the eye can flow right through the gag. And the fewer words, the better. Frankly, it's very tough to use fewer words. It's easy to use a lot of words, but to do pantomime is one of the toughest things to do in humor. I like to do a little different kind of humor each day. Some days are word gags, quotable quotes I call them, things you'd like to repeat at school or at the office. Some days are just big physical gags. One editor told me once, the secret to a good comic strip is to have your lead character get hit over the head at least once a week. Sometimes in a good week I have Garfield get hit over the head 2 or 3 times. And then sometimes I just do a sweet gag, a smile gag, or something thoughtful like that to show that Garfield is human. But with those handful of elements and those challenges, I basically sit back and have a good time. When I write for the strip, if Garfield makes me laugh, I know he's going to make you.